I'm going to ask Sashi because, there is very little direct export competition between the two. So would it really matter if we had a big one-off devaluation in the renminbi to India?
Well, at the moment, the terms of trade between India and China are so bad in terms of from India's point of view, there's so much to India's disadvantage. We've had, to begin with, a massive trade imbalance throughout the growth period. Trade's now at about $70 billion. But about 60 billion of that is Chinese goods being sold to India. There's practically nothing the Chinese are buying from India. And that's become a real issue. It's not the value of the renminbi, but much more Chinese disinterest in Indian products. They were buying raw materials when they were growing, almost colonial terms of trade. But now the raw materials are of less interest to them. They don't need iron ore and they don't need coal and they need all these things because they're not manufacturing as much as they used to. And the second problem is the things we do want to sell them, like pharmaceuticals. There are various non-tariff trade barriers that's making it impossible for us to break into the Chinese market.
Because they're protecting their own pharma?
So there are huge frustrations. I mean, for us, the value of the renminbi is the least of our problems. It's about actually being able to sell our goods in China at whatever price is reasonable for the Chinese to pay for them. And at the same time, we haven't been tough on the Chinese goods coming into India, which have wiped out many industries. I mean, a 2,000-year-old Indian industry of natural dyes has been wiped out by Chinese chemical dyes completely. Nothing, you can't buy an Indian dye anymore in India. Toys, even our Hindu gods are being manufactured in China now. So, I mean, this is extraordinary. But in turn, they need to lift some barriers and let India into their market as well.
Okay,
that's very important.
Sashi, this question has to be for you as well. This is from David Chu again. Thank you, David. What will it take for India to consistently achieve the kind of economic growth rates China has enjoyed in the last 3-4 decades?
What will it take?
Yeah.
It'll take Indians becoming Chinese, so that's not going to happen. But we have a lot of good things going for us, and amongst the things we have going for us are the entrepreneurial spirit of the Indian people. There's an old joke that the Indian economy grows at night when the government is asleep. That unlike China, it's not government-led growth, it's entirely private initiative-led growth, and I think that's largely true. We have first-class entrepreneurs who've not only in the diaspora but at home. We have people who have established themselves a tremendous track record of management, world-class companies coming out of India, not something the Chinese can say yet. There aren't Chinese equivalents to Tata's or Infosys or Wipro or whatever. India has also taken FDI outside, so that, for example, the Tatas have turned around Jaguar Land Rover. They didn't succeed with British Steel, but they did get Jaguar Land Rover into the black, and it's doing very well, and so on and so forth. So there's tremendous energy out there. There's talent. There's a huge domestic market which has been functioning. Domestic consumption's up. I do feel that the fundamentals are there to take India forward. I don't think we're going to grow at 10% as China did, but I think we can sustain 7 to 8% over the next 20 years and get to numbers which are credible. Already in PPP terms, we are the third largest economy in the world. We've overtaken Japan. And in exchange rate terms, we could draw level with the US around 2050 to be second to China. Those are the projections by Goldman Sachs.
That's not a bad place to be either.
It's entirely feasible. The challenge is, of course, for us that we have this huge opportunity, which is also potentially a disaster, and that's demography. 65% of our population is under 35, 50.1% under 25. The people who are ready to start work are all in India now. The ILO says that we've got 116 million people between the ages of 20 and 24 in the year 2020. China will only have 94 million at the same time. We could be the dynamic sort of workforce for the world.
Right.
We have to train them, equip them. We have to have an infrastructure and a manufacturing industry to absorb them.
Final thought. Would it be fair to say, unlike, let's say, China, in India, if you're not able to, let's say, maximize this demographic dividend, right? You have a lot of people without jobs. The government cannot deliver. The difference with China is you will not have so much a revolution, you'll just have a different government.
Yeah, we just keep changing governments and elections. Though, in fact, right now we have a government with a secure majority for 5 years. Would have been a great opportunity to do more than they have done. They've allowed themselves to answer that question more fully, to be distracted by unnecessary issues, cultural issues of religious chauvinism and so on, which have needlessly distracted the government and the nation from the real agenda of economic growth and transformation, where they would have found people willing to back them across the spectrum. That's one thing where the Chinese system, because of its rather rigorous control, has been able to avoid. There has been a single-minded focus on getting rich. And I think that is the real answer to your question. That's what it would take to make India grow like China, is if we can focus single-mindedly on getting rich.
Oh, okay. I think many people would agree
Maybe
with
we're
you
not capable
on
of
that. Now, I'm going to get spanked by our Credit Suisse minders, but I'm really just too tempted. I have to ask this question. This is from, let's see here, Raj Chatrani. And I assume this would be for Sashi, although Martin can have a crack at this too. Raj is asking, to what extent do caste and communal differences hinder India from realizing its true potential? Does the fact that China is culturally more homogenous than India give China a very strong edge? Sashi, first go.
Well, yes, we have all these differences, but the great strength of India has been, it's been an outstanding example of the management of diversity in the developing world. Fact is, many societies have that diversity. As I said, the Africans look at us and they see many similarities. The question is, how do you manage that? Is it always going to be a source of conflict? When conflict erupts, are you able to diffuse the conflict effectively? And through our democracy and our system, we have been able to do that. I think one of the great unsung accomplishments of 70 years of Indian democracy, look back at articles in the 1950s and 60s predicting India's imminent disintegration. The London Times and places like that, Neville Maxwell, a big China fan, wrote articles saying this is going to be India's last election, he wrote in 1967. Well, there have been a dozen more since. The fact is that people didn't see how India would hang together, but India managed the difficult art of saying you can be divided by caste, creed, color, culture, conviction, cuisine, custom and costume, and still rally around a consensus. And that consensus in a democracy like India is on the fundamental principle, which China doesn't have, that you don't need to agree all the time, so long as you agree on the ground rules of how you will disagree. So our success is that we managed to maintain consensus on how to manage without consensus. Can China do that the day the consensus disappears?
You see,
Can it?
I think China is a fascinating country in this sense. There it is, a fifth of the world's population. The longest continuous existing polity in the world, as I mentioned earlier. And if you look at the map, what happened to all the old empires? All the old empires have disappeared. And there's China, which started off as an empire, and it's still there. Now, how is it still there? What's the key? I think there is one key factor behind the fact that China still enjoys this sort of cohesion.
It is?
It is that China consisted of a multitude, historically, of many different races and ethnicities. And yet, over time, the process of Hanization, that is, people regarding themselves to be Han, which has become not quite but almost synonymous with being Chinese, was a remarkably successful process. It's taken 2,000 years. But if you look at the population surveys now, over 94% of Chinese think of themselves as Han. That is an extraordinary fact. And I think that underlying China's, the fact that the centripetal forces that hold China together are generally, but not always, stronger than the centrifugal forces, is for this reason.
How concerned are you about the opposite of that is, I was going to bring up, say, Muslims in Xinjiang, Tibetans.
But look, you see, yeah, of course there's a problem. But look, the fact is that there are 20 million people in Xinjiang province, which is a huge, geographically huge, but largely uninhabitable. 10 million of them are Uyghur, are Muslim. Just 10 million people. Or if you look at Tibet, what's the population of Tibet? Under 5-6 million? Plus the people who live in Sichuan and so on. They're very small relative to the total population of China. I'm not involved in, do the Chinese handle these problems rightly? In many ways, I don't think they do.
Okay.
But they are tiny compared with what we're talking about, which is 1.4 billion people. And this is the key to understanding China.
Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I've got all three screens here screaming at me to wrap up. I wish we had more time. This is very interesting and exciting, even for me. So thank you to both Martin as well as Sashi, and to you for joining us this afternoon. Hope to see you again next year.